There comes a moment in life when something inside you starts to change, and almost no one can explain what's happening. It's not exactly sadness. It's not exactly anxiety. It's not just exhaustion. It's as if the old version of your life has started to feel too small for who you're becoming. As if the entire landscape of your reality can no longer contain the frequency of the person you're beginning to be. And the strangest part is that this process almost always looks like chaos when it begins. It feels like a crisis. It feels like losing control. It feels like everything is falling apart all at once. But what if I told you that maybe nothing is actually going wrong? What if what you call a collapse is, in fact, an upgrade? A process of expanding consciousness that only looks like destruction because your mind is still trying to interpret the new through old filters. Throughout history, spiritual traditions, philosophers, and now even certain branches of neuroscience have converged on the same idea. Human consciousness evolves in stages. There are levels of perception, identity, presence, and understanding of reality. And each time you move up one of these levels, your entire life has to reorganize itself to reflect this new frequency. The problem is that almost no one teaches you this. No one explains that part of the suffering you feel doesn't come from failure. It comes from growth. And real growth, when it truly happens, is almost always mistaken for loss. The first level of this journey is the most common, and also the most unconscious. It's the state in which a person lives completely identified with their story, their name, their body, their problems, their traumas, and their circumstances. They believe that what happens outside of them determines what they feel inside. They live reacting. They live trying to survive. They live believing the world is doing things to them. In this state, consciousness is completely asleep within matter. The person doesn't see themselves as the creator of their experience, only as someone trying to endure it. And although this stage is limiting, it isn't wrong. It's necessary. Every awakening journey begins in forgetting. Every seed starts buried before it breaks through the soil, but then something shifts. And it almost always begins as a strange discomfort, a nameless unease. The person keeps living the same life, going to the same places, being around the same people, but something inside no longer fits the way it used to. They start noticing repetitive patterns. They realize certain types of pain keep returning in different forms. They see similar situations showing up with different faces. And for the first time, a disturbing question arises. What if the problem isn't just the world? What if there's something in me creating this too? This is the first crack in the conventional perception of reality. The moment when a person begins to suspect that life may not be random, that there may be a connection between their inner world and what shows up externally. And then the seeker is born, the one who begins to study, who dives into books, videos, philosophy, spirituality, psychology, neuroscience, metaphysics. They want to understand what's happening. They want to decode life. They want to make sense of the patterns. They want to discover why certain people seem to repeat the same cycles over and over. But here, there's a subtle trap. Knowledge without embodiment. Because understanding something intellectually doesn't mean you've transformed your own frequency. Many people spend years in this stage, able to explain everything about consciousness, manifestation, and energy, while continuing to live exactly as before. The mind understands, but the nervous system remains stuck in the same conditioning. The body still reacts the same way. The emotions still fire the same way. The identity is still the same. And that's where the stage arrives that almost no one wants to face. Because real progress doesn't begin when you learn something new. It begins when who you used to be can no longer survive within what you've learned. At this point, something starts to become clear. This isn't just about learning more. It's about becoming someone different. And if what you're hearing right now is starting to resonate on a deeper level, don't let this be just another moment of awareness that fades when the video ends. Subscribe to the channel and stay connected, because this process isn't about a single realization. It's about repeatedly remembering what most people forget the moment they return to their routine. The world constantly pulls you back into old patterns. and this space exists to bring you back out of them. If what I'm saying makes sense to you, and you feel ready to deepen this experience, I've left a more complete material in the pinned comment. You don't need to look at it now. Just remember it when the time feels right. It's at this point that life enters the most uncomfortable phase of evolution: deconstruction. It's at this point that life enters the most uncomfortable phase of evolution: deconstruction. Because when consciousness truly begins to expand, it doesn't just add new ideas about who you are. It starts to dismantle everything that can no longer exist within your new frequency. And this process rarely feels spiritual while it's happening. Most of the time, it feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels as if everything that once gave meaning to your identity is collapsing all at once. Relationships stop making sense. Environments that once felt familiar start to feel heavy. Goals that once motivated you lose their shine. There's a deep sense of not belonging, as if you no longer fit into the very life you built. This is the moment when many people believe they're regressing, when in reality, they're being reorganized. Because every real transformation requires a kind of symbolic death. There is no rebirth without a previous version of you ceasing to exist, and the ego interprets any dissolution of identity as a threat. It doesn't know how to distinguish between dying and evolving. To it, losing old patterns feels like destruction. That's why so many people run precisely when they're closest to change. They return to old relationships, old habits, old distractions, anything that offers the false sense of familiarity. Not because those things still make sense, but because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. But when you move through this phase without running, something extraordinary begins to happen. Gradually, the chaos loses its appearance of punishment and starts to reveal its true nature: reorganization. You begin to see that what was falling apart wasn't being taken from you. It was being removed because it no longer matched who you were becoming. And in that moment, a new kind of intelligence emerges within you. A quiet trust, a clearer intuition, a greater ability to sense when something expands your energy and when something contracts it. You stop making decisions based solely on logic, fear, or external approval, and you begin to feel your way forward even before you can rationally understand it. This is where many people have their first real experiences of synchronicity. Unlikely coincidences. Answers showing up at exactly the right moment. People appearing with messages that feel tailor-made for what you needed to hear. Doors opening with no apparent effort, as if reality itself begins to respond more directly to your internal state. And maybe that's exactly what's happening. Because the less conflict there is between what you feel, what you think, and what you are, the more coherent the field becomes through which you interact with the world. At this stage, life stops feeling like a constant battle and starts behaving more like an intelligent mirror. You realize that the more internally aligned you are, the less force you need to apply externally. Not because effort disappears, but because resistance decreases. You still act, still work, still build, but you're no longer doing everything from a place of tension. You no longer have to fight against yourself every step of the way, as a new and almost unfamiliar feeling emerges for those who've spent years in survival mode. Lightness, flow, coherence. But there is an even deeper transition waiting beyond this, because even this more conscious version of you may still be operating from a separate identity, a self trying to manifest, control, improve, achieve, evolve. And there comes a moment when even this spiritual identity needs to be transcended, because the next level of consciousness is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about realizing that what you call yourself may never have been who you truly are. Because the next level of consciousness is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about realizing that what you call yourself may never have been who you truly are. And this is the point where the journey stops being merely psychological and becomes existential. Up until now, you were still trying to refine the character, heal its traumas, raise its vibration, improve its habits, align its life. All of that matters. All of that is part of the process. But there comes a stage when the very idea of identity begins to be questioned. Who is this I that is trying to evolve? Who is this observer that notices thoughts? Who is this silent presence that continues to exist even as emotions change, as phases pass, as every version of you dies and is reborn? When this question stops being philosophical and becomes a direct experience, something profound happens. You begin to realize that there is a dimension within you that has never been wounded, a part that was never diminished by the rejections you've faced, that never defined by your failures, never altered by the stories you've told about yourself. There is a core of consciousness prior to personality, a presence that observes everything, yet is not limited by anything it observes. And recognizing this completely changes the way you live. Because from this point on, you no longer need to defend every opinion as if your identity depended on it. You no longer need to control every situation to feel safe. You no longer need to win every argument, prove your worth all the time, or construct a perfect image in order to be worthy of love. When you stop completely identifying with the character, the world loses part of the power it once had over you. Circumstances still exist, challenges still come, physical and emotional pain may still arise, but there is no longer the same desperate attachment to the narrative. You feel without being consumed. You observe without getting lost. You live without needing to turn every experience into a threat to your sense of self. That's why many describe this stage as a deep peace. Not because life has become perfect, but because there is finally inner space between you and the chaos. The world may remain noisy, unpredictable, demanding, but within you there is a stillness that does not depend on external conditions. You begin to see that true freedom was never about controlling everything around you. It has always been about no longer being enslaved by everything around you. And paradoxically, it is precisely when you stop trying to obsessively control reality that your ability to influence it becomes more powerful. Because now your actions no longer arise from fear, lack, or the need to prove something. They arise from clarity, from presence, from coherence between what you are and what you express. And when a person acts from that place, their energy changes, their communication changes, their perception changes, their very presence begins to affect environments. People can feel when someone is whole. They can feel when someone is no longer seeking validation all the time. They can feel when someone is speaking from inner truth rather than performance. But there is still a stage beyond even this peace. A point where consciousness doesn't just recognize its own essence, it learns to live from it continuously. And that is when manifestation stops being a technique, stops being an effort, stops being a separate practice, and becomes a natural consequence of your state of being. Because when there is no longer so much internal resistance, reality begins to respond with an almost unsettling fluidity. At this stage, you realize that what you once called manifestation was never about attracting things, as if you were negotiating with the universe. It was always about removing the noise that prevented your true nature from expressing itself without distortion. Life begins to flow, not because you've learned some secret technique, but because you've stopped constantly interrupting that flow with fear, doubt, neediness, and resistance. Effort doesn't disappear, but it stops feeling heavy. That action still exists, but it's no longer driven by the tension of someone who believes their worth depends on the outcome. You work, create, love, build, and move. But now everything comes from a stable inner center. That's why people at this level seem to carry a different presence. They don't necessarily speak louder. They don't necessarily become famous, wealthy, or extraordinary in the eyes of the world. But there's a kind of quiet gravity about them, a calm steadiness, a clarity that reorganizes environments without force. Because someone who is deeply aligned with themselves stops sending contradictory signals to reality. They don't ask for abundance while living in emotional scarcity. They don't ask for love while believing they are unworthy of it. They don't ask for peace while feeding conflict within their own mind. Everything begins to move into coherence. And then you understand something that completely transforms your relationship with existence. Life was never trying to punish you. It was never conspiring against you. It was never delaying you out of cruelty. It was simply reflecting, with relentless precision, the state of consciousness from which you were living. Every difficult phase, every repetition, every loss, every crisis served as a mirror, served as feedback, served as an invitation for you to awaken to deeper levels of yourself. That's why looking back, after awakening even a little more, completely changes how you interpret your past. What you once called rejection may have been redirection. What you called delay may have been preparation. What you called an ending may have been liberation. And what you called destruction may have been the very mechanism through which life was removing what could no longer keep up with your expansion. In the end, spiritual growth is not about becoming someone superior. It's not about turning into a perfect, untouchable, enlightened version of yourself. It's simply about remembering. Remembering that behind all the roles, stories, traumas, fears, and masks, there is an intact awareness observing it all. A presence that has never been broken. An essence that never needed to be fixed, only recognized. And maybe that's why you came across this message. Maybe the discomfort you've been feeling isn't a sign that your life is falling out of alignment. Maybe it's a sign that it's finally finding its true axis. Maybe the chaos you fear so much is just the sound of old structures collapsing so that something greater can emerge. Maybe your soul is trying to show you that you're not lost. You're simply outgrowing the old version of who you thought you were. So if right now everything feels uncertain, if parts of your life are falling apart, if people are drifting away, if plans are changing, if your identity is being questioned from every angle, pause before concluding that something has gone wrong. Sometimes collapse isn't failure. Sometimes collapse is initiation. Sometimes losing the ground beneath you is exactly what forces you to discover that you've had wings all along. And when you finally understand this, the fear of change begins to fade. Because you realize that every internal ending has always been followed by a more authentic version of yourself. And if this perspective shifted something inside you, don't stop here. If this message truly resonated with you, if you felt that quiet inner shift, that sense that your mind is ready for something greater, I left a resource in the pinned comment that goes deeper into this process. I only recommend it for those who feel genuinely ready to accelerate their results, but follow it in your own time. If it calls to you, you'll find it there. If this shifted something in the way you see your reality, don't stop here, because what you've just understood is only one part of a much bigger picture. In the previous video, we went deeper into how internal patterns silently shape everything you experience, and why real change only begins when those patterns are no longer sustained the same way. It's appearing on your screen right now. Go watch it next, because that piece connects directly with what you've just seen, and it will make this entire perspective click on a much deeper level.